значительной степени тот уровень благосостояния, который достигнут в бывших колониальных державах, он основан на ограблении Африки. Это всем известно хорошо. Да, собственно, исследователи в той же самой Европе этого и не скрывают. Так и есть. Они говорят, на горе и страданиях африканских народов построено в значительной степени, не говорю целиком и полностью, нет, но в значительной степени благополучие колониальных держав. Это очевидный факт. Ограбление, работорговля, конечно.
What happens when the very uranium that kept France's lights glowing for decades is finally claimed by the people who dug it out of the desert? The world was stunned when Niger struck a deal with Russia's Rosatom to build its first nuclear power plant. An announcement that doesn't just change energy but rewrites geopolitics in Africa. But how did Niger, once trapped in France's grip, reach this turning point? Let's find that out. The announcement came like a thunderclap across Africa and Europe alike. Niger, long dismissed as a peripheral state, has signed a historic agreement with Russia's Rosatom to build its very first nuclear power plant. For outsiders, it may sound like another technical project, but in truth, this single deal represents a seismic rupture in the old order of power on the continent. A country that once saw its uranium stripped and shipped overseas without enjoying the benefits at home is now determined to use that same uranium to fuel its own future. The decision is not just about lights flickering on in Nigerian households. It is about sovereignty, dignity, and defiance. In a nation where less than 20% of the population has access to electricity, the promise of a domestic nuclear plant feels revolutionary. It signals the end of an era where Niger's natural wealth illuminated Parisian boulevards while its own people cooked with firewood. The symbolism could not be clearer. Niger is rewriting its destiny, and Russia is offering the pen. Rosatom's peaceful atom package is ambitious in scope. It is not merely the construction of a nuclear plant, but the establishment of a new nuclear ecosystem. Alongside power generation, the plan includes research reactors, medical applications of nuclear technology, and training programs for young Nigerian engineers. Imagine Nigerian doctors treating cancer with isotopes produced in their own labs, or Nigerian scientists running experiments once only possible in European facilities. This is the vision Russia is selling, and for a nation eager to break away from Western control, it resonates deeply. But the timing of the announcement is what has amplified its shock value. Niger's economy is still reeling under sanctions imposed after the 2023 coup. Borders have been shut, imports restricted, and Western aid suspended. Blackouts are routine, fuel prices are unstable, and industries are suffocating. Against this backdrop, the nuclear deal feels like a defiant punch through the suffocating walls of isolation. It is a way of saying, if the West closes its doors, Niger will find new ones to open. Global reactions have been swift. In Moscow, the deal was celebrated as proof that Russia's strategy in Africa is bearing fruit. In Paris, there was unease bordering on panic, because this is not just about Niger buying Russian technology. It is about Paris losing its most prized leverage in the Sahel. Western analysts warn that Niger may be trading one dependency for another, yet for many Africans, that critique rings hollow. After all, dependency already defined the relationship with France, except it came without dignity, without technology transfer, and without real benefits for Nigerians themselves. The deal also sends ripples through the broader Sahel region, where Mali and Burkina Faso have already broken ties with France and pivoted toward new alliances. By choosing nuclear power, Niger is not just breaking with a past of exploitation, but leapfrogging into an energy future that few believed possible for a country ranked among the world's poorest. This is why the story has captured so much attention. It collapses the old stereotype that Africa is destined to remain a raw material exporter, while others dictate the terms of its development. And yet beneath the optimism lies a pressing question. How could France have held on to Niger's uranium wealth for so long, keeping the nation in poverty while extracting prosperity for itself? To understand why this deal matters so much, we must turn back to the history of exploitation that set the stage for today's revolt. For over half a century, Niger was more than a supplier, it was France's lifeline. Yet the arrangement was never one of equals. It was structured from top to bottom, as a continuation of colonial dependency dressed up in modern contracts. The story begins in the 1970s, when vast uranium deposits were discovered in Niger's northern deserts. By then, France had already decided to anchor its energy policy in nuclear power. Today, nearly 70% of French electricity comes from nuclear plants. But behind this apparent triumph of energy independence lay a bitter truth. France's reactors were powered not by domestic strength, but by Nigerian uranium extracted under exploitative deals. French state-controlled companies, most notably Orano, formerly Areva, secured mining rights that allowed them to purchase Niger's uranium at prices well below global market value. These agreements were reinforced by diplomatic pressure and aid packages, ensuring Niger had little room to renegotiate. For decades, the profits flowed north to Paris, while Niger itself saw little benefit. It was a textbook example of resource colonialism. The raw material was dug out, shipped away, and refined elsewhere, leaving behind little more than environmental scars and economic stagnation. Life near the mines told the real story of this so-called partnership. Communities around Arlit and Akokan, Niger's uranium hubs, lived in the shadow of radioactive dust and contaminated water. Reports from health groups highlighted higher rates of respiratory illnesses, yet hospitals lacked resources to treat them. Electricity generated from the uranium under their feet did not reach their homes. Instead, Nigerian families relied on kerosene lamps, charcoal stoves, and in some cases, open fires. The contrast was grotesque. While Parisian boulevards sparkled with nuclear-powered light, Nigerian children did their homework by candlelight. Why didn't Niger simply walk away from such lopsided arrangements? The answer lies in the architecture of dependency. France tied its mining contracts to broader economic agreements, offering limited aid, loans, and political backing in exchange for compliance. Niger's leaders, often constrained by internal instability and military coups, lacked the leverage to resist. Any attempt to push back risked retaliation, aid cuts, diplomatic isolation, or pressure through international institutions where France wielded influence. The uranium trade became a chain, binding Niger to France even as the country languished near the bottom of global development indices. But exploitation was not just economic, it was psychological. French narratives of partnership portrayed Niger as incapable of managing its own resources, suggesting that only Paris could extract uranium efficiently. This rhetoric seeped into international media and policy-making circles, reinforcing the myth that Niger was too poor, too unstable, too fragile to chart its own course. In reality, it was not incapacity, but deliberate exclusion. Niger was kept from developing the expertise and infrastructure that would have allowed it to process uranium domestically. By the early 2000s, discontent in Niger was simmering. Activists, labor unions, and local communities began to question why their land's wealth was enriching others while they remained in poverty. Protests erupted in mining towns, demanding better conditions and fairer revenue sharing. France responded with token gestures, minor contract revisions, development promises that rarely materialized, but the core exploitative structure remained intact. The system persisted not because it was fair, but because France had mastered the art of dressing exploitation in the language of cooperation. This is why the events of recent years, the nationalization of French-operated mines, the expulsion of French troops, and now the nuclear deal with Russia are so shocking to Paris. They are not just policy shifts. They are a wholesale rejection of the economic empire France built in the Sahel. For Nigerians, it is not simply about energy. It is about finally confronting a legacy of humiliation that kept them dependent for generations. And yet, rejecting France is only the first step. The bigger question now looms. What exactly is Russia offering in return? And can Niger ensure that this new partnership doesn't turn into another form of exploitation dressed in different colors? That is where Rosatom's Peaceful Atom initiative comes into focus. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. If France's model was built on extraction and exclusion, Russia's pitch to Niger could not be more different in tone. The Rosatom proposal, branded under its global Peaceful Atom Initiative, is not about carting uranium away. It is about embedding nuclear technology inside Niger. And this difference is precisely why Niamey's leaders see the deal as transformative rather than transactional. At its core, the agreement envisions the construction of Niger's first nuclear power station. But this is only one layer of a multifaceted plan. Beyond electricity, Rosatom has committed to building research reactors, developing nuclear medicine programs, and establishing training pipelines for Nigerian specialists. Unlike the past, where uranium was simply dug up and shipped to France, this plan promises to turn Niger into a site of scientific and technological advancement. Start with electricity. Niger is one of the most energy-starved countries in the world. Frequent blackouts cripple industry, while rural communities remain entirely off-grid. A nuclear plant would not only stabilize the national grid, but also provide the kind of base load power necessary for industrial growth. This is crucial for a country that aspires to move beyond subsistence agriculture and become a player in regional trade. Electricity is not just about lights. It is about factories, hospitals, and schools functioning consistently for the first time. But Rosatom's offer extends deeper, into areas that were once unimaginable for Niger. Research reactors, for instance, are small-scale nuclear facilities used not to produce electricity, but to conduct scientific experiments and train specialists. With such reactors, Niger could finally study its own uranium in detail, building local expertise that had long been denied under French dominance. This means Nigerian scientists would gain the skills to innovate in nuclear technology rather than depending entirely on foreign labs. Then comes the medical dimension. Nuclear medicine has revolutionized healthcare in advanced economies, offering cancer treatments, diagnostic imaging, and advanced therapies. In Niger, where medical infrastructure is fragile and many patients are forced to travel abroad for specialized care, the introduction of nuclear medicine could be life-changing. Rosatom's plan includes providing isotopes for cancer detection and therapy, allowing Nigerian hospitals to treat diseases that are currently death sentences for those who cannot afford to leave the country. Equally critical is the promise of training. Rosatom has pledged scholarships, internships, and long-term programs to build a generation of Nigerian nuclear engineers, technicians, and doctors. This represents a fundamental break from the French model, which never invested in Niger's human capital in the same way. For Niger's youth, many of whom face unemployment and a lack of opportunities, the prospect of mastering cutting-edge technology is more than attractive. It is empowering. It places the tools of development directly in their hands. Of course, the initiative is not without challenges. Nuclear energy requires not only infrastructure but also robust regulatory frameworks, independent oversight bodies, and a culture of safety. Niger has none of these yet. Financing remains a critical question, as nuclear plants cost billions to build and maintain. Security risks also loom large, especially in a region plagued by insurgency and instability. But Rosatom's pitch acknowledges these hurdles, promising not just hardware, but the institutional and human support needed to overcome them. This is why Niger's leadership views the deal as more than just energy policy. It is a leap into modernity, a statement that the country will no longer be confined to the role of raw material supplier. By choosing nuclear power, Niger is not only addressing its electricity deficit, it is demanding recognition as a serious player capable of mastering advanced technology. It is a declaration of ambition as much as a solution to energy poverty. Yet ambition on this scale does not unfold in a vacuum. The peaceful atom deal comes at a time when global geopolitics in the Sahel is shifting dramatically, with Western influence in retreat and new alliances emerging. That raises the next pressing question. What does Niger's nuclear gamble mean for the wider balance of power across Africa and beyond? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Niger's nuclear leap cannot be understood in isolation. It is part of a broader storm sweeping across the Sahel, a region where the pillars of Western dominance are collapsing faster than at any time since independence. France, once the unchallenged master of West Africa, has been expelled from Mali, Burkina Faso, and now Niger. The United States, long seen as France's strategic partner in the region, has found its influence waning as well. Into this vacuum step new actors: Russia, China, Turkey, and even the Gulf states, each eager to claim a role in shaping Africa's next chapter. The nuclear deal is not just about uranium or electricity. It is a visible crack in the architecture of Western control that has dominated the Sahel for generations. The most immediate geopolitical shockwave is felt in Paris. France has always considered the Sahel its pré carré, its backyard. Its troops patrolled the deserts, its companies mined the resources, and its diplomats claimed to guarantee stability. But over the past that stability has crumbled. Popular anger boiled over in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, where protests targeted French embassies and military bases. These weren't abstract grievances. They were rooted in lived realities of exploitation, insecurity, and unfulfilled promises. By the time Niger expelled French troops in 2023, the writing was already on the wall. France's empire in Africa was no longer sustainable. The nuclear deal with Russia thus hits France where it hurts most, not on the battlefield, but in the economy and prestige. For decades, Paris could boast of securing energy independence through nuclear power, yet that claim rested on Niger's uranium. Now Niger is not only reclaiming its uranium, but turning to France's global rival to help transform it into domestic energy. It is humiliation of the highest order. The colony has not only defied the colonizer, but invited another power to help build what France never allowed. For Washington and Brussels, the implications are equally troubling. The West has long presented itself as the indispensable partner for African states, providing aid, loans, and technical expertise. Yet in Niger, that narrative is collapsing. The sanctions imposed after the 2023 coup were intended to isolate Niamey's new rulers, but they achieved the opposite effect. Instead of bowing to Western pressure, Niger sought alternatives and found them. The nuclear deal demonstrates that Africa is no longer confined to one lane. If one partner closes the door, another will open it. Meanwhile, within Africa, the ripple effects are profound. Niger is not acting alone. It is part of the Sahel alliance, formed with Mali and Burkina Faso. This bloc openly rejects French influence and champions sovereignty over natural resources. The nuclear partnership with Russia strengthens this alliance, offering a blueprint for how African states can leverage their assets for technological and strategic gains rather than raw extraction. It sends a clear message across the continent. Dependency on the West is not destiny, and alternatives exist. This is why the nuclear deal is more than an energy project. It is a statement of alignment. It places Niger firmly within the camp of countries willing to defy Western sanctions, challenge old hierarchies, and explore partnerships that recognize African agency. It also ties into a global trend where the global South increasingly seeks multipolarity, no longer content with the US and Europe dictating terms. For Russia, the move strengthens its foothold in Africa, demonstrating that Moscow is not just a military partner, but a provider of advanced technology. For Niger, it cements its role as a pioneer in breaking away from dependency. But with new alliances come new uncertainties. If Niger is stepping boldly into a multipolar future, the question becomes, can this nuclear gamble translate into genuine independence? Or will it risk entangling the country in another web of dependency? That is the test of energy sovereignty and the real challenge Niger must now face. For the first time in modern history, African states are not merely reacting to external powers. They are actively shaping the conversation about their own energy futures. Energy sovereignty is more than just keeping the lights on. It is about breaking free from a cycle in which Africa has long been locked, exporting raw materials at bargain prices, importing finished goods at inflated prices, and relying on external aid to plug the gaps. That cycle has kept economies dependent, societies vulnerable, and governments beholden to foreign capitals. By choosing to invest in nuclear power, Niger is challenging this structure. It is not just saying, we will sell uranium differently. It is declaring, we will transform uranium into power for ourselves. This is what makes Niger's move so symbolically powerful for other African nations. The continent is not short of resources: cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo, oil in Nigeria and Angola, gas in Mozambique, and platinum in South Africa. But too often, these riches have been siphoned off with little local value added. Niger's pivot suggests another model, one in which resources are not merely exported but processed, utilized, and reinvested domestically. If Niger, one of the poorest and most sanctioned nations in the world, can embark on such a path, why not others? The potential ripple effects are vast. Imagine in Africa where Congo doesn't just export cobalt but manufactures its own electric vehicle batteries, or where Ghana isn't merely the world's top cocoa exporter but dominates global chocolate production. These are not fantasies. They are the logical extension of the principle Niger is now asserting. The nuclear deal, in this sense, is a seed. Whether it grows into true independence or a new form of dependency depends on how it is cultivated. For Niger specifically, the challenges ahead are steep. Financing a nuclear project under sanctions requires creativity, whether through barter arrangements, alternative banking channels, or alliances with other non-Western partners. Building the regulatory frameworks to ensure safety and transparency will demand not just technical expertise, but political will. Ensuring security against insurgent groups who may target such infrastructure is another urgent concern. Yet none of these obstacles negate the transformative potential. Instead, they highlight that sovereignty is not gifted by outsiders. It must be built brick by brick, policy by policy. Crucially, Niger's decision shifts the psychological balance. For too long, Africans were told they were not ready for nuclear technology, not capable of mastering advanced systems, not responsible enough to wield such power. By entering this deal, Niger is rejecting that narrative outright. It is saying that Africa can be trusted with the same tools others have long monopolized. This is not dependency. It is ambition, agency, and the assertion of dignity. The West, of course, will continue to warn of risks, just as it did when African nations nationalized industries or joined new alliances. But Africans themselves must ask, who benefits from those warnings? France benefited from Niger's uranium, not Nigerians. Europe enjoyed stability, while Africans endured scarcity. If sovereignty carries risks, it is because true independence always does. Niger's nuclear plant has yet to be built. Its benefits will take years to materialize. But in the realm of ideas, the revolution has already begun. The mere fact that Niger dared to make this choice signals to the rest of Africa, and to the world, that the era of passive submission is ending. The uranium that once symbolized exploitation is now being turned into a weapon of pride, ambition, and future possibility. The question is no longer whether Africa can achieve energy sovereignty. The question is how quickly others will follow Niger's lead, and whether the world is ready for an Africa that finally powers itself. Do you think Niger's nuclear gamble marks the true beginning of Africa's energy independence? Let us know in the comments section. Can Russia be a trustworthy partner, or will Niger risk falling into a new dependency? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.